Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm your host Anna Heslop, and today I'm talking to plant and food research scientist Brad Howlett about a project that has just been completed. It's a 3-year project which has been looking at opportunities for using drone flies to pollinate vegetable seed crops. So first of all, Brad, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about drone flies? What do they look like? Are they generally present?
Yep, drone flies are actually a type of hoverfly, and there's a lot of hoverflies around. Hoverflies are really interesting because often they just are mimics of Hymenoptera and bees. So bees and Hymenoptera sting, so predators try and avoid them. So the hoverflies want to look like them, they can trick their predators. So the drone fly is really interesting because it's decided to mimic or follow a mimic of a honeybee. So they're actually really common on our crops, but you probably wouldn't notice them because they mimic honeybees. So you're there just looking around, you think you see a honeybee, but it can actually be a drone fly. And they are common across a range of crops: carrot, onion, brassicas, radish.
So from a pollination perspective, what made you focus on drone flies specifically?
Drone flies are really good pollinators of a range of plants and crops. They look a lot like honeybees. They're hairy. They pick up pollen really well and they transfer it really well. So that's one reason they're efficient pollinators. The second is that they've got a very simple life cycle. So the larvae will feed on organic material in water that's decaying. So it could be a whole range of things. So grass or broadleaf plants, weeds, effluent. So a lot of those things are available on farms. So a farmer can access that material and rear them through by large numbers. So that, plus being really good pollinators, is an obvious candidate to focus on for a pollinator.
Okay, so a big part of your project was actually figuring out a method or some DIY ways to breed your own drone flies for pollination.
Yeah, so there's a couple of elements there. Firstly, finding out what sort of materials on farms that could be used to be able to develop a system that's cheap and easy. And then the second is to design practical ways that they can be reared on the farm, that farmers can then take up and use to be able to rear a new managed pollinator alongside their honeybees.
And so have you successfully achieved such a method?
Yeah, it has been really good. So we've been able to use a whole range of substrates. So a grower can think of, if they've got broadleaf weeds that are growing somewhere, that they can easily just cut and put into a container for rearing drone flies, then that's really good. Old Bailage is really good. Effluent's good. So there's a whole range of things that were really successful in rearing thousands of larvae through.
So talk me through the process, because they are dumping this stuff out in the paddock. How does it actually work?
So firstly, you need to be able to keep this material in solution, allow it to decay. And you could do it basically in any sort of container can work. So we trialled ditches to start with, which were really effective, but they have less flexibility. So, you can only really put them on the side of your field and you need access to water. But we reared thousands through that method. A second one that we trialled earlier on was smaller containers, so 60 litres.
So that's kind of like a fish crate size.
So they're much better in terms of practicality, in terms of moving them around. But they had a tendency to dry out too quickly in our hot summer weather, which requires a bit of maintenance, so going out every few days to make sure that the liquid hasn't evaporated. Mm-hmm. So in the end, in the final year, we looked at something that might make it a bit easier to try and deal with those issues that we had with those earlier systems. So we tried 1,000 litre IBC containers. Now farmers can move these wherever they want with their tractor, and they have that amount of volume of liquid that avoids fast evaporation of that material. So that means that it's got that ability to be movable, so farmers can move from one crop to the other or concentrate them in an area that they're particularly interested in. And then it doesn't require as much maintenance as those smaller containers.
So what happens is they've got their container, small or large, but the larger the better in terms of maintenance or topping up. Fill it with your substrate, which can be anything, obviously not sprayed lawn clippings or anything like that.
Lawn clippings are good, but not sprayed. So avoid anything that's had any sort of pesticide application to it.
So you put them in your container, fill it up with water?
Yep. Put as much of that material as you can. So fill it up as much as you can, then add the water. And make sure that, you fill that up with water. I mean, a material like, it's going to vary depending on what sort of substrate you use. Grass clippings you can fill up to the top and still add a stack of water to it. Effluent, of course, is liquidy, so you're going to be putting probably about half of the effluent or adding water, or full effluent actually, because it's already liquid.
Okay. And so the drone flies, they'll just find this, they'll sniff it out or something. You don't need to shoo them in to find it?
Yeah. So usually a really good indication is when the material gets smelly. That's when drone flies find it.
Okay.
And drone flies, because they're already abundant, and then they will find it. So there's drone flies are really common, and when they're attracted to something, they'll lay hundreds of eggs on it.
Okay, so a female is going to come in and lay eggs in that tank or trough or whatever you're using. And if there's plenty of them around, then there's going to be plenty of eggs laid because they can lay hundreds each.
Yep. And then they emerge as larvae after a few days. And you will notice, all you have to do is you can look for them. Just use a stick or something and disturb the surface, and you will see them by the thousands basically just crawling through the substrate. That's a really great sign.
Okay. And then how long is it going to take them to pupate and emerge as pollinators?
Usually a couple of weeks till the larval stage. Then they go into pupation for about a week or so. But it depends on the weather. So if it's cool, then they'll be slower to go through their life cycle. So you should allow at least 8 weeks before you start developing big populations of adult flies.
So if you'll know when your crop is going to be flowering, and that's when you want the pollinators there, you should start putting those bins out at least 8 weeks before.
Yeah, and if you go earlier, because the drone flies will be continually developing larvae for up to a month or so, and possibly longer on some, in some circumstances. So get them out earlier than 8 weeks so that you can ensure that, any sort of problems with the weather, then you've taken that into account, and so you're going to have large numbers when you need them.
So as long as the contents of that trough or container stay damp, the drone flies are just going to keep coming back. They're going to keep laying eggs. They're going to keep reproducing.
Yeah.
As
Over several months, that will happen. Eventually, the substrate will basically become inactive or unattractive to the flies. Often it's by the smell. So while it's smelly, it's attracting the flies. Once it loses its smell, then you can basically start again, or have other boxes ready to go as well.
Can you just top it up?
Topping it up is an interesting thing. It's an area that we have trialled. It seems as though you can top it up to a certain extent, but we've had severe population drops if we add too much substrate in at once. So I would recommend try and just stick with that material the whole time. Don't add more than half the volume of water at a time, because that seems to also cause larval deaths as well. So try and just do things on a low level.
I've got a paddock of radish or onion or any hybrid vegetable seed crop.
Yep. Hybrid, yeah, pretty much all of the ones that are in hybrid system, drone flies will be good.
So if I was looking at a clover paddock or some other crop, I would know how many hives I wanted per hectare. Does it work like that with these tubs?
At this stage, that's something that we're developing. However, at this point in time, apart from getting used to developing the method, trialling it yourself, seeing if you can get thousands of pupae through, then you're getting past the first step. At this stage, we've been able to rear 10 to 20,000 pupae through each container. And as a rough guess, we'd say 1 to 2 containers per hectare would be good to go. But this is something that we need to work on to develop. It would be wonderful if we can get to that point where we can have, just like hives, a recommended stocking rate for your fields.
So the initial part of the project has finished. Is further work going to continue on this sort of thing?
We're hoping to. So stocking rates, we've got some ideas where we want to, actually measure if we didn't have honeybees in a crop, how many drone flies would we need to get full pollination? So sort of decoupling the honeybee role versus the drone fly role would be really excellent information for us and sort out that stocking rate issue.
So currently the honeybees and the drones are working side by side.
Side by side, which in itself is really good because firstly they back up each other. If honeybees have found something more attractive and are flying off, you've got the drone flies there. There's also a slightly different variation in when they're most active. Drone flies tend to be more active under the slightly cooler conditions. So under 24 degrees, you often see a lot of drone flies active at that time. When the temperatures get really high, like into the mid-20s and 30s, then honeybees become very good at pollinating. So they complement each other, which is also really good under our weather conditions where you can have cool days and warm days. Having both of them active, then that adds resilience.
Yeah. Cool and warm and wet and dry all in one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what would you really like to see happening with your drone fly breeding project? What would you like to be seeing out on farm?
I would really like to see us have the option to move away to only just relying singularly on honeybees or managed honeybees. If we can get drone flies to work, growers will have a cheaper pollinator that they can also manage side by side, maybe even save some money if drone flies are that cheap to rear. And so ideally the dream would be to see Canterbury full of drone flies as well as alongside honeybees so any vegetable hybrid seed crop seeing drone flies in side by side. And also thinking that, for New Zealand, this adds resilience to our system.
So if a grower out there, hello growers, you're listening to this and thinking, I'm going to do this, that sounds quick and easy, where would they go for more information?
Okay, so we've produced a manual which is now available through FAR. So that's the first port of call. Have a read of that manual. It's pretty simple to follow. You should be able to pick up most of that or all of it, hopefully, and then just go out and give it a go yourself. But if you've got any questions, then just approach FAR and we can assist with information that we have. So I would really like to see growers give it a go and realise how easy it is.
Thanks, Brad. So just confirming that user manual or instruction sheet, which has a series of photos step by step showing what you need and how to build it, is available on the FAR website on the resources page, and we'll be flicking it out in the weekly newsletter for the next few weeks because now's the time that you should be doing that.
Yeah, definitely get those boxes out.
Thanks very much, Brad, and thank you very much, listeners. Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.